Bolivia's former president Evo Morales arrives to his homeland from exile. For the second time in less than 2 months, Peruvian President Martín Vizcarra faces a possible impeachment for alleged corruption. The world continues to suffer the consequences of the COVID-19 pandemic, with a total of more 50 million confirmed cases this weekend. Hello, welcome to From the South. I'm Gladys Quesada from the TeleSUR headquarters in Havana, Cuba. We begin with the news. Stay with us. Former President of Bolivia, Evo Morales, began popular caravan as part of the return to his homeland. After visiting political, social and indigenous activist Milagros Sala, former President Evo Morales began his trip to the border bridge of La Quiaca in Argentina, where he held a farewell meeting with Argentine head of state Alberto Fernández. The president thanked the population for the accompaniment and also celebrated the return of democracy to Bolivia. On the first day of the caravan, Evo Morales will travel through the towns of Villazón, Atocha and Uyuni in a journey of more than 4 hours and 290 kilometers.
I did not doubt that we would return, but we were not sure that it would be so soon. Something historic, something unprecedented. Thanks to the unity of the Bolivian people and the support of many authorities in the world. Sisters and brothers, the history of the permanent struggle for life, for humanity, for peace, and for democracy is repeated again. And for that reason, I am surprised by the assistance of the Argentine people, and especially of our brother, President Alberto Fernández. Thank you very much, Brother Alberto.
On Monday, the President of Argentina, Alberto Fernández, expressed his satisfaction and joy that former President Evo Morales is finally able to return to his homeland.
How nice to be here. Today is a really beautiful day. It is a very important day for all of us. It is very special to be here in La Quiaca, in this place, the limit of Argentina. To have been able to know and receive the love and affection of each and every one of you. And it's very important. Thanks, you don't know how much I love you all. And it is very important to be here in La Quiaca for this reason. The reason is to guarantee that our dear colleague and brother Evo Morales returns to his homeland, from which he should never have left and should never have been mistreated as he was. For the last 4 years, Latin America has been disintegrating into individualities. Like Evo says, we are part of a great homeland, a homeland that wants to grow, a homeland that wants justice, a homeland that wants development, not for some, but for all, a homeland that wants to embrace everyone, not some, a homeland that wants each and every Latin American to be part of this wonderful continent. We don't want countries for some, we want countries for all. We want every nation to be able to grow and develop, and to achieve this objective, there is an instrument that we must never forget. It is the most important instrument that we have, and it is called democracy.
Venezuela's General Attorney offered a balance of the meeting held with the Attorney General of the International Criminal Court, where the violation of the human rights of the Venezuelan people by the United States was evaluated.
In this case, the serious violation of human rights suffered by the Venezuelan people are being studied. There is a constructive collaboration between the offices of both prosecutors. In this case, the serious violation of human rights suffered by the Venezuelan people are being studied as a consequence of the sanctions against our country, which, as it is known, have affected the right to health, including the right to food, and as a consequence of both violations, have also affected the right to life.
Then Tarek William Saab said that he will send information to the International Criminal Court that will detract from the public prosecutor's office work in defense of human rights.
We emphasize that in this stage of preliminary analysis there is a constructive collaboration between the offices of both prosecutors in order to provide sufficient information on the actions of the Venezuelan justice system. And this is what we did in part on Wednesday, November 4, and that in the next few days we will also deliver to the Office of the Prosecutor of the International Criminal Court information that reveals, in this case, that the Venezuelan state punishes and pursues those who violate human rights.
The Venezuelan Attorney General also affirmed that he possessed data that computes and proves the investigations carried out by the Public Prosecutor's Office on human rights violations in the country.
In the event that the prosecutor concludes that such or such crimes are within her jurisdiction, we will be able to demonstrate in a convincing manner that in our country the acts of violence and the violation of human rights have been investigated, and to the extent that those responsible have been able to be identified, they have been punished with the full force of the law.
Venezuela's Foreign Minister Jorge Arreaza led on Monday the recovery of the Venezuelan embassy in La Paz, Bolivia, after the usurpation by the envoys of opposition leader Juan Guaidó with the collaboration of the Bolivian de facto government. After the change of leadership the day before the inauguration of Bolivian President Luis Arce, this act established that the Bolivian authorities recognizes the government of Nicolás Maduro as a legitimate and sole authority in Venezuela. According to a video shared by Arreaza himself, representatives of diverse social movements and political parties accompanied the retaking of Caracas' diplomatic legation in La Paz. All of this was, according to the Chancellor, in support and solidarity with the Venezuelan people. And we'll go now to a short break. Stay with us. Welcome back to From the South. For the second time in less than 2 months, Peruvian ex-president Martín Vizcarra faced a possible impeachment for alleged corruption. The legal inquiry that led to the removal of Vizcarra as president of Peru is debated in Congress. The motion of vacancy for moral incapacity required the support of 87 of the 130 Peruvian parliamentarians for its approval. In this opportunity, the president was accused of receiving bribes of the granting of public works, the contracts, while he was the governor of the Department of Moquegua. In his defense statements, Vizcarra rejected the accusations. And the president of Peru, Martín Vizcarra, did not successfully overcome the second vacancy request against him on Monday in Congress and was excluded from the executive. The replacement will be taken by the president of Parliament, Manuel Merino, who will have to take over the government until the end of current terms, which end on July 28, 2021. The dismissal occurs due to moral incapacity, while an investigation is progressing in the prosecutor's office for an alleged case of corruption in the construction of a hospital when he was the regional governor of Moquegua. After an extensive debate that lasted more than 4 hours, the president's detractors in parliament managed to obtain the necessary 87 votes out of 130 possible to advance with the impeachment. Thus, the final vote of Congress was 105 in favor of interrupting his mandate and 19 in favor of continuity. For his part, Vizcarra went to the headquarters of the legislative to present his defense to the parliamentarians. A vacancy would increase fears about institutionality, he said. In addition, he asked the Constitutional Court to pronounce on the interpretation of this appeal. As for his accusation, he remarked, "There is no reliable proof of any crime, and there will not be, because I have not charged any bribe." In any case, he affirmed that he will let the judicial investigations advance. This instance came after a previous vote when the parliament defined the political trial with 60 votes in favor, 40 against, and 18 abstentions. The process took place because Vizcarra was accused of having moral incapacity to govern, amid suspicions of having received bribes for the installations of the health center before becoming president. Likewise, Vizcarra had requested to advance the date of the final vote to last Friday, arguing that the case generated permanent anxiety. However, the board of directors of the Congress rejected the request and decided to hold the vote for November the 9th, as it finally happened. The initiative for the impeachment was presented by legislator José Vega Antonio, Secretary General of the Nationalist Party Union for Peru, UPP, who argued that the people are tired of corruption presidents and called for a great crusade to fight corruption. Thus, the head of state could not succeed in 2 attempts to remove him from office in less than 2 months. The previous one, developed in September 18, was for an alleged irregular hiring of the singer Richard Cisneros by the Ministry of Culture.
Hemos escuchado entonces algunas declaraciones del parlamentario de Podemos Perú, donde pues él ha indicado algunas declaraciones. Vamos nosotros a continuar conversando con algunos congresistas. Claudia, comentarte que hay bastante movimiento aquí en Pasos Perdidos y también en los exteriores del Congreso de la República, luego de conocerse esta vacancia que se aprobó y se procedió. Vamos a regresar con mayor información. Claudia, estamos contigo.
Así es, Harumi, te agradezco a ambas que están ahí en diferentes puntos del Parlamento.
And the U.S. President Donald Trump fired Defense Secretary Mark Esper on Monday. According to the president's inner circle intimates, the measure was expected even before the virtual victory of Joe Biden in the presidential elections was known. In the order of dismissal that was spread through a Twitter message by the U.S. president, it was also announced that the person who will replace Esper in the Pentagon will be the director of the National Center of Anti-Terrorism, Christopher Miller. This happens after a local media in this country revealed that Trump and Esper may have had differences after the national protest for racial justice about 2 weeks ago. And Russian President Vladimir Putin won't congratulate Joe Biden on winning the U.S. presidential election until the results are official, the Kremlin said on Monday, citing the possibility of court challenges. Unlike many other world leaders, Putin has remained silent since U.S. media called the election in the Democratic candidate's favor and said Biden had achieved the necessary 270 electoral college votes to clinch victory over the incumbent president Donald Trump. Kremlin's spokesperson Dmitry Peskov told reporters that the Russian government considers more appropriate to wait for the official results. According to Putin's spokesperson, the circumstances are more complicated this time around. On Saturday, Biden was congratulated by UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson, French President Emmanuel Macron, and Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi, among others. Moscow confirmed Monday that a Russian Mi-24 helicopter was shot down in Armenia near the border with Azerbaijan. The incident occurred in the evening as the aircraft was escorting a motorcade to a Russian military base. The Mi-24 helicopter was hit by a missile from a portable air defense system. The official representative of the Russian Ministry of Defense, Major General Igor Konashenkov, said the Russian helicopter was shot down in the airspace of the territory of the Republic of Armenia, outside the combat zone with Azerbaijan. 2 of the helicopter's flight crew members were killed and 1 was evacuated with moderate injuries. The Azerbaijani Foreign Ministry announced to have downed the Russian helicopter by mistake and said that Baku was ready to compensate Moscow for the downed helicopter, expressing condolences over the death of the crew members. Baku explained that the flight of the Russian helicopter took place in irregular circumstances, and given the tense situation in the region, the combat team on duty made the decision to open fire. On Monday, Syria's President Bashar al-Assad told his Russian counterpart Vladimir Putin ahead of a Moscow-backed conference on repatriation that the return of refugees is a priority for his government.
For us, as a government, it is the #1 priority in the coming stage, especially after a big chunk of territory was liberated and battles subsided, despite ongoing acts of terrorism. The biggest problem is the Western siege imposed on Syria, on the state and its people. Therefore, their return requires the provision of their basic and necessary needs, such as water, electricity, and schooling, as well as other basic services, in addition to the need to revive the economic cycle. The Syrian government is not just ready, but also eager for the results of the conference so that we can see the largest number of refugees return in the coming few months.
With 68 new cases recorded in the last few hours, the number of COVID-19 infections in Syria has reached 6,215, according to data from the Ministry of Health. Of that figure, about 2,357 patients were recovered from the disease. 4 people died in the last 24 hours, and the death toll rose to 317 since the pandemic was detected country on March 22nd. Syria maintains borders closed and is constantly guiding the people on issues such as awareness on the pandemic and knowledge of the rules that must be adopted in terms of symptoms. And estimates by the International Labour Organization show that about 245 million full-time jobs will be lost in the last trimester of this year due to the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic. According to estimates, that number accounts for an 80.6% loss of working hours worldwide in the last quarter of 2020 compared to the same period last year. One of the reasons of this revision is that workers in developing and emerging economies, particularly in the informal sector, have been more affected than in previous crises, the international body noted. According to the UN agency statistic, 94% of workers live in countries that are still implementing some kind of restrictions and confinement due to the spread of COVID-19 contagions, thus affecting workplaces, and 32% of nations where all jobs, except those that are essential, have been closed. And we have more news coming up after a final short break, so stay with us. Welcome back to From the South. The world continues to suffer the consequences of the COVID-19 pandemic, with a total of more than 50 million confirmed cases this weekend. The number of fatalities sums up to the figures of contagion, registering 1,260,000 people who died after contracting the new coronavirus, according to the data provided by the University of Johns Hopkins. The United States continues to be the country most affected by the pandemic after surpassing this Monday the figure of 10 million cases of the infection with the virus and reaching 237,000 deaths. The US is followed by India with more than 8.5 million cases and more than 126,000 deaths, and Brazil with more than 5.6 million confirmed cases and more than 162 and 200 diseases from the COVID-19. A 17-day fire-break lockdown has come to an end in Wales despite some of the highest regional infection rates in the UK and calls for an extension of restrictions. On Monday, Wales' 17-day lockdown came to an end and a new set of national measures came into effect. The decision of not to extend the lockdown has come under considerable criticism because COVID-19 rates in some part of Wales are the highest in the country. The health portfolio representatives stress that people must respect social distancing as the new measures which sees pubs, gyms, hairdressers and other non-essential business reopen come into place. The loosening of restrictions also mean people can travel around Wales, including moving from high-risk areas to low-risk areas. For its part, Switzerland deployed more than 2,500 military personnel to support testing operations and provide aid in the most affected areas by the pandemic, where hospitals are already overwhelmed. In the meantime, increasingly restrictive measures are sparking protests in Europe, especially in the labor sector. Lebanese Health Minister Hamad Hassan highlighted on Monday the necessity to impose a full lockdown amid the sharp rise in the number of coronavirus cases nationwide. Following a meeting for the Medical Scientific Committee at the Ministry of Public Health, the minister described the full lockdown as a chance to beef up the readiness of the healthcare sector. Partial lockdown did not yield the sought results, he said. The head of healthcare also announced that after a series of contacts with the central bank, it had been decided to earmark center amounts for private hospitals to devote wards to coronavirus treatments. And India reported more than 46,000 new COVID-19 cases in the last 24 hours. According to the Health and Family Welfare Ministry, the total number of COVID-19 cases surpasses 8.5 million. The nation reports a COVID-19 death toll of nearly 127,000. Despite increasing numbers of contagion and deaths, authorities decided to restore commercial activities. India also experiences an air pollution crisis. The Ivory Coast Constitutional Council formally validates President Alassane Ouattara's re-election for a third term in office.
Now, Mr. Alassane Ouattara received 3,031,483 votes, thus achieving a score of 94.27% above the absolute majority required. It is therefore appropriate to proclaim him elected in the first round of President of the Republic of Ivory Coast, following the ballot of Saturday, October 31st, 2020.
And Tunisian President Kais Saied and UN acting envoy to Libya, Stephanie Williams, attend the opening ceremony of the Libyan Political Dialogue Forum, where rival Libyan factions are meeting for UN-led talks aimed at bringing a lasting peace to their war-torn North African country and preparing for elections.
I'm convinced that the solution must only be Libyan, and we have been working for several months on a solution coming from the Libyan people. It is a historic moment that we are living today. It's a day with history, and no one wants to miss it.
You have gathered today to continue forging a new era of peace and stability for Libya. You have the opportunity to end the tragic conflict and create a future of dignity and hope.
And we have come to the end of this news brief, but remember, you can find this and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. Also, if you feel so inclined, join us on social media, Facebook, Twitter and Instagram. For TeleSUR English, I'm Gladys Quesada. Thank you for watching.